Hey guys, my name is Lily and I can't believe that I have to make this video, but today I want to review my Geiger counter, get familiar with it again, because honestly I'm frightened of the rhetoric that we can read in the media. So unfortunately our leaders are threatening each other openly in the public with nuclear war. Some politicians demand the first strike. So I really do hope that the political leadership of the world will come to their senses again and don't consider using those weapons, because otherwise we have, it can end in the end of mankind, the end of everything, complete annihilation. At the end, Mother Earth will look like Mars. So that's the worst outcome. But still, it really depends on what weapons they will be using. Will it be just a few tactical ones, or only a few ones that they detonate in the stratosphere? So if they use a few of those weapons, I think we should still get prepared for that, even though a lot of people say we cannot survive a nuclear war, but a lot of experts disagree. For example, this guy here, Crescent H. Kearney, and he is of the opinion that a nuclear war can be survived. So I read through it and it seems plausible. Now honestly, I personally did never know a lot of nuclear weapons, and it gave me a great scare, which is good. You should be scared of nuclear weapons. But after reading this book, it was like, okay, there are some things that I can do to keep myself and my family safe, and there are a lot of mistakes that you can make. If you do them, it can cost you your life. So it's really important that you follow a few principal rules, like for example going inside of a building and take cover, closing all of the windows and doors, and then shower off the radioactive material from your skin and from your body. So after reading this book, I know that a lot of people have a good chance of surviving. Of course, it depends on how many weapons they're using, what kind of weapons, and how they are detonating it, on the ground, surface burst, or in the air burst. But for example, if most of the nuclear weapons are used in the northern hemisphere, there's a high chance that people will survive it in the southern hemisphere. So, and even in the countryside at the northern hemisphere, if you're lucky with avoiding hotspots, then you can still make it. So unfortunately, this is a topic that I do not really like, and I don't like to present that because it's a really, it's a really sad topic. I hope it never comes to this. But reading this really helped me coping with my fear, and now I can see all of this more rational. And yeah, also what I want to tell you about is this map here. This is the map of Austria after Chernobyl. So unfortunately, after Chernobyl exploded, this radioactive fallout was blown over Austria with the wind, and then it rained down in hot spots. And here on this map you can see green spots, yellow, orange and red spots, and the red spots are the ones where a lot of nuclear fallout fell down. So it's not evenly distributed. You always have hot spots. In some spots it's really radioactive, and in other areas it's green and safe. So although we had some radiation back in 1986, especially with cesium-137, which has a half-life of 30 years, we still survived that. And the thing that people did back then, I was 2 years old, so I couldn't do anything, but my parents, they avoided food that was growing in the garden, and they only got food from greenhouses. Gladly, we were in an area which was green actually, so it was not too bad in my area. And then also people stopped drinking milk because they were advised to do so, because the cows were eating a lot of the radioactive iodine, which was then in the milk, and also the cesium. And here you can see a report from the Federal Environmental Agency in Vienna, and they described what happened and what kind of radionuclides came to Austria. It was iodide 131, the one that can get into your thyroid. Now gladly it only has a half-life of 8 days, so in a couple of weeks the iodine is not as dangerous anymore, but of course there are other radionuclides like cesium 137 with a half-life of 30 years, and then you have ruthenium, strontium, and a lot of other radioactive materials which stay in the country for longer. So that really sucks, of course, but still we dealt with it and we survived it. And yes, you will have a higher rate of cancer and thyroid issues and leukemia, but still most people survived that. So there was a lot of fallout coming from Chernobyl, so it must also be possible to survive fallout from nuclear weapons. Yeah, so that's the report, and now I would like to tell you about my Geiger counter. This is not sponsored or anything. I bought this myself, I think 7 years ago. Back then it was really expensive. It cost me like 450 euros, and back then I thought, oh my god, this is really expensive. I should not have bought it. But now I'm happy because now the same Geiger counter, this is the rechargeable version of the Gamma Scout, by the way, is costing 620 euros on Amazon. So crazy expensive. Also, I know most people do not have the budget to buy something like this right now, and this is why I want to recommend to you that you get a cheaper one on Amazon. Even a cheap one can still detect gamma radiation, which is better than nothing. Okay, you can get one for 100 bucks, 200 bucks. If possible, get one which can detect beta and gamma radiation. That would be great. Now in my case here I have one which can detect alpha, beta and gamma radiation, and I can switch between them. So yeah, that's the best thing that you can have. But if alpha is not possible, then at least beta and gamma should be possible. Alright, so this is my Geiger counter. Now I want to switch on the sound. And right now the background radiation is 0.08 microsieverts. So that's normal. So there's always a little bit of background radiation. It's gamma radiation. Now if you're getting a Geiger counter, I can highly recommend that you also get some radioactive material, because you want to test your Geiger counter every now and then if it's still working, right? So for example, if there's really a nuclear war breaking out, you're going to freak out, okay? It's going to put you in a lot of psychological stress. Then you have a Geiger counter, but then you might not trust it. So it's really important that you have some radioactive material so you can test your Geiger counter and then you see, okay, it's still working. Now the same thing actually happened to survivors in the wilderness. So if you get lost in the wilderness, it might happen that you don't trust your compass anymore because you are in such a big emotional and psychological distress that for some kind of reason you don't trust the compass, and then you will lose your bearings even though you have a compass, and you might die. So the solution to this problem is that you get 2 compasses. They are not expensive, and if both of them are pointing to the same direction, then it must be true, right? Now the problem is I don't want to get 2 Geiger counters because they are so expensive. So it's cheaper if you organize yourself some kind of radioactive material. In my case, I went on a radioactive material hunt on a flea market in Vienna. I heard that there are radioactive watches around. Back in the 1920s, they were painting the clock hands of the clock with, I believe, radium paint, which makes them luminescent. So I heard that some of those watches are still around, and then I went on a search on a flea market, and I just searched all of the watches, and finally I found one. So my Geiger counter was freaking out, and there was one watch in between a pile of watches that was radioactive, and I immediately bought it because the guy who owned it didn't know what it was. And yeah, the watch is right here. So this here is a radioactive watch by the company Doxa, and I keep it in this plastic bag because if it's leaking, I don't want any nuclear particles coming out of the watch. So I have protected it with this plastic bag. And yeah, I try to give you a close-up of the watch now, and then let's see how the Geiger counter reacts when I come close to it. Okay, now let's come close to the watch and let's see the reading of the Geiger counter. Now I have the window completely open, so now I'm detecting alpha, beta and gamma radiation. So right now the reading says 25 microsieverts. It's pretty crazy that I really found this on a flea market in Vienna. And I'm really glad that I found it, because otherwise it would be still out there without the owner knowing that this is dangerous. So I really do think that a Geiger counter is a good prep. And even if it's not for, nuclear war, you can still use it in case of another Chernobyl, another Fukushima. We don't know if a nuclear meltdown will happen again in future. The technology should be safe, but still a lot of things happened in the past. This is why I have a Geiger counter. Without the Geiger counter, you will freak out because you don't know which food you can eat, if your garden is full with fallout, radioactive fallout, or if it's safe. So you really want to have something like this, okay? So through the tin can, I only get a reading of 3 microsieverts anymore. So there's still a little bit of radiation here, but the farther you go away, the less you will get. And that's because of the inverse square law, which says that if you double the distance from your radioactive source, then you will get like 4 times less radiation or something like that. So I'm not quite sure about the exact calculation, but that's the inverse square law, and this is why I can sit here without having to have a fear about getting damaged. So if you are wearing this on your hand for years and years, then it will definitely damage the cell structure of your skin. But as far as I know, it will not turn me radioactive, because alpha, beta and gamma radiation cannot do that. So if I put my hand here, then take it away, and now if I measure my hand, it's not radioactive, okay? Nothing. There's nothing here. That's because alpha, beta and gamma radiation, they cannot make you radioactive. Only the neutron radiation can do that. So this neutron radiation can only be found, I believe, inside of the reactor when it comes to the fission, and also it can come from the fission of a nuclear bomb. But the radioactive particles that came to Austria, I think most of those, they were just alpha, beta and gamma emitters, so they were not able to make you radioactive. If you ingest those particles, they can still radiate from in your body, which will damage you, which is devastating, of course. But you yourself and your cells and your atoms, they are not becoming radioactive, because only neutron radiation can do that. So I think that's how it is with neutron radiation. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I learned when I did a little bit of research. So this radiation cannot make me radioactive, and I actually tried it. So I took the watch and I placed it beside a tomato for an hour, And then when I took away the tomato, it was not like radioactive. I could not detect any radiation with this Geiger counter. So this is why you can still eat vegetables from inside of a greenhouse, because although the radioactive fallout particles are sitting on top of the greenhouse and besides the greenhouse, the tomatoes, they are still not contaminated because it's not directly on their skin. So you can still eat vegetables and fruits inside of greenhouses, but of course the greenhouse has to be like airtight. So the question is, if you open up the greenhouse and the dust comes in with the wind, if it's really safe to eat. And in that case you would have to install a vent which has a particle filter so that the dust particles, the radioactive ones, stay outside. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to wear masks anymore, but in case there is a nuclear weapon used in your area and you suspect that the fallout is coming to you, so please, in that case, wear a mask, because you don't want to breathe this in, you don't want to get the radioactive particles inside of your lungs, of course, and it will be very bad for your health. So wear a mask, and if you're outside while the incident happens, then make sure that you get inside, take cover, take a shower, throw out the clothes, don't use them anymore, and close all of the windows, doors, and stay in the basement of the house or in the middle of the house. And this is really important, especially for the first few days of when the bomb explodes. Of course, it also depends if it's a surface burst or an air burst. It has different kinds of effects. There's more fallout if they drop the bomb directly on the ground. There's much less fallout if they let it explode in the air. But then you have different kinds of problems, because you will get an EMP that spreads out farther. So yeah, many possibilities how they can use those weapons. So everything is possible. All I can say is it's a topic that I don't like, because it's really threatening for all of us citizens of the planet, and it scares me. It scares me and it sucks, and I think it really sucks that a few people can make this decision over us, and they should not use those weapons. It's crazy. It's lunacy. So if somebody really wants to press the red button, I think he's crazy, because only crazy people will do that. Only psychopaths would press a button. Also, I do not want to scare you with this video. I'm in general a very positive person with a lot of hope. So what I do to cope with this stuff is I read about it. I read books like this to learn more about the topic that scares me. And I do some research. I get some preps. And after that, I try not to think about this anymore. Okay? So because it's not good for your mental health. Just do your preps. Then you will feel a little bit better. This actually makes me feel better if I'm prepared. And then just live a normal, happy life, because otherwise it will drag you down, and that's not good for you. Okay? So try to be happy, hopeful, and let's hope that the future will become a better place.